Good afternoon. Good morning to you, sir.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, Christopher Wyze, to the Blues Matters interview session to talk about Christmas songs within the blues.
Well, Christmas songs in the blues, people say, what do you do in the blues around Christmas? That's supposed to be happy. But if you're a normal person, there's always a little twinge of nostalgia and, feeling about times in the past or maybe people who aren't with you anymore. And, there's a great history of the blues of Christmas songs that have been written for 100 years about Christmas time.
Yeah, it's like you've just said, people don't normally associate the blues with Christmas songs with the blues. So, but I must admit, the two that you've done, and the one that was originally done in 1929, pretty darn good. So what made you decide to do two Christmas songs? What was the first inkling to do it?
Well, Stephen, you and I have talked on many occasions, and my band is a little different than most. We have gotten into this whole blues world by first recording instead of touring and then playing out. We're mainly a studio band that's putting music out. And with that in mind, I had a release last year that was live in Clarksdale. It came out in April. And I thought, well, let's keep this thing going. Our fans are virtual. They're all over the world, and they're waiting to hear our music. And instead of us going to see them and playing in front of them, our music travels for us. So I thought, hey, Christmas is a perfect time to send some new music out. And then it became a question of, okay, now what do we do? And I start thinking about doing original stuff. And then I ran across the great Scrapper Blackwell and Leroy Carr song. And that one just kind of tore my heart out. It's like, I got to do that.
Well, yeah, it's been sort of meteoric rise recently. It's all happened all at once, hasn't it?
It has.
Your career and the band's career, but which is great. And I think it's only going to get bigger. You're going to start touring, and playing live to people, hopefully very soon. And hopefully you can make it over to Europe and to England especially,
We would love to
great.
do that. And now that I know Emma Wilson, and Emma's she's got the same thing going. She's a shooting star as well and just a sweetheart. And I love getting to know her and work with her in the studio. And she said, Chris, you got to come to England. That's in my head. And I think between the two of us and friends over there like you, I want to make it happen.
Yeah, we'll do everything we can to make that happen. So how did you and Emma first meet? Because I've known Emma for quite a while now, and she's always great and very bubbly, got a great voice. So how did you two first become connected?
Well, we both work with Select-O-Hits. They distribute my music and they distribute Emma's music. They're in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's the Phillips family, Johnny Phillips, who's Sam Phillips' nephew. So I'm on their big radio records label, and Emma distributes on hers, and Select-O-Hits distributes both of our music. So one day, Missy Query, who I work with at Select-O-Hits and Big Radio, said, do you know Emma Wilson? I'm like, well, I know who she is, of course. She goes, well, you two ought to talk someday. I think kind of out of the blue, I contacted her maybe on Facebook, and I said, hey, be great to just chat and get to know each other a little bit. And I sent her an email and said, here's what I'm doing. What are you doing? And, before we knew it, I think I wrote this down. I went back and looked it up. On September 4th, we talked on WhatsApp. We had a chat and just had a lovely time. And at some point, I think I said, hey, I'm going to do some Christmas music. Would you be interested in doing it with me? And she said, well, I'm doing a tour, kind of a mini tour of the Mid-South in the U.S., in September, late September. And I said, well, I'm not that far from there. What do you think? And she says, well, I got one day that I'm free and not performing and driving and all that stuff. So it was the 25th of September. And I said, okay, I'll see if we can find us a studio. I started working on a song that she and I and Ralph Carter, my co-writer and producer on my other albums, started working on this song. And it was just a whirlwind throwing it together. But I met her for the first time in person that morning as I picked her up and we headed to the studio in Memphis, Royal Studios. So kind of a whirlwind, but put together by folks who knew both of us and said,
a whirlwind to meet for the first time that morning and then record the song, get the song written. I mean, that is doing things quickly.
It is doing things quickly. And, Stephen, it's kind of once you get into this thing, and you get a lot of good people around you who can help you, like you've been great help to me, and Johnny Phillips has been great help. And then you get Emma, and we got connected with Royal Studios through Johnny Phillips. He made a phone call and said, "Hey, I got a guy who's on my label here, and he needs a studio. What do you got?" And I remember Boo Mitchell, who runs the studio. I think he's up for all sorts of Grammy Awards this year for all the music in the movie Sinners, which of course is a huge hit. And he said, "Hey, we can help you. I can bring the band together." And man, that was just a couple of weeks before we showed up in Memphis. And we had a couple scratchy little demos that Ralph Carter and I made, and did it on a kind of an iPhone thing, and sent them over to Boo. And we showed up that kind of midday on the 25th of September. We all met each other for the first time, the band, Emma, myself, Boo, although Emma had worked in Memphis and played with these guys, the band, before, and also
Yeah.
worked with Boo Mitchell. So, hey, we threw it together, and it was just cool creating music with those guys in the studio that day.
And you obviously hit it off musically with Emma straight away. To tune up like that, when record something with somebody you've never met before. There must have been an instant musical appreciation, if that's the right phrase.
Well, I think so. She and I collaborated on the song with Ralph. So, we were all working on the same thing. We just had never met. We were doing it over email and texting on WhatsApp and occasional phone calls. So, it's almost like I felt like I've known her my whole life. It's like I remember walking into the hotel lobby, and it's like, okay, well, where's Emma? I certainly would recognize her. And, she comes down the elevator, walks out. It's like, Chris, Emma, it's like we're long lost friends. We give a big hug and off we go. So, that's a great way to start. And, we both love the blues. She just put out her songs with Willie the Willie Dixon songs. I love Willie Dixon. I love Chess Records. We love the same thing, and we're now working together to kind of, I guess, express that love of the blues and get to make a new Christmas song. And one that we kind of felt was, I loved it because I love her voice so much. I tried to make it in the lyrics, and I took a first crack at the lyrics to have it feel like an old school song, kind of maybe from the 40s or 50s, and she's got that voice that just made it all work. I felt like I was the straight guy in the song there, Stephen. She's all the flavor. I'm kind of the dull guy back there. But Boo put us in the vocal booth, Boo Mitchell, the producer, and we're literally across from each other. She's over there, I'm here, and we can see each other when we're singing. So that made it cool too, because we were able to relate. And I'd never been in that studio. I didn't know what we were getting into, and it was great that I think Boo probably had that in mind when he said, we got to make this record work, so let's put them in there next to each other. And it was fun. We were, singing to each other. It was very cool.
Well, it's certainly worked. When I first listened to it, I was a bit dubious. How's this going to sound now? A Christmas blues song, but excuse me, but it just works. It just works. It's
I give Ralph Carter he really created the musical idea for this, and he sent me a little guitar demo, and I'm like, oh man, some of the ways the changes work and the bluesiness of it just knocked me out. So I really think it was a true collaboration. Ralph, me, Emma, the great players at Royal Studios, the high rhythm section. I mean, those guys, Stephen, they've been playing together for, I don't know, 50 years, most of them.
Yeah, Emma couldn't speak more highly of all them guys when she went over here. We had a great interview when she did her first album, and then I interviewed her for the Willie Dixon, Spoonful of Willie Dixon. So, she was just raving about that. So how did you come across Christmas in Jail? What was originally Ain't That a Pain, which was released in 1929? How did you first come across that?
Well, I live in the Midwest here in the U.S., in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's a few hours south of Chicago, okay? And some years ago, I learned that Leroy Carr and Scrapper Blackwell pretty much spent their whole life in Indianapolis. That's where they weren't born here, but they lived pretty much their entire lives here. And they even recorded here in Indianapolis their great hit, How Long Blues, which was a massive seller in the 20s. And everybody, including us, my band has recorded that one, Clapton, BB King, you name it. So I kind of got into this Leroy Carr, Scrapper, Blackwell thing. Who are these guys? So I've just listened to so much of their music, and they had such a unique style. I think, Stephen, you're a student of the blues. You listen to some of that early stuff, and it sounds a little different to our ear today. It's maybe plinkier, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But somehow between Carr and Blackwell, and they had no drums. It was Leroy on the piano and Scrapper on the guitar and singing. But somehow they had a little different sound that still sounds a little more relevant today than maybe some of the old stuff that, if you're not a real blues person, you hear that older stuff and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like what I recognize. But so I got into those guys. Of course, I'm listening to all their music. Then I hear this thing, Christmas in Jail, Ain't That a Pain? I'm like, man, someday I'd love to do that song. And we did get into the studio. You mentioned that the original song has a couple of lines in there that we didn't include. We gave this our own arrangement and moved the lyrics around a little bit as well. But I will say it's a very complex song, the way that that Carr and Blackwell did it originally. It's the first few times I heard it, I was like, I don't even think I can sing that. It's so unusual. And sure enough, we get in the studio and we get together as a band. It's like, guys, if we hope to get this recorded today, we better make this something we can do without having to work on it for a week. So yeah, we altered it a little bit and made it into something that we knew the band could get done. But man, that's I don't know. You've heard that song, right? Christmas in
Oh
Jail.
yeah,
Ain't That a Pain?
yeah.
What's your take on that thing? It's kind of an unusual song.
It's very unusual. Like I say, it's not what you would expect from that era, from the 93. We're talking 100 years ago now. It's a
Yeah.
century ago, which throws a different light on things to me. But when you listen to Son House in the 20s, or people like that, Bessie Smith, or it's not that type of blues, but lyrically, I think you identify with it.
Yeah.
Identify with it lyrically, but sound wise, it's slightly different, and that's what is intriguing to me about it, because it does sound. It's not what you've, like you said, what you have imagined in your head. It's not like that. And like I said, but the lyrics are, I mean, really, when you look at the title, Christmas in Jail, which would give you the blues, and Ain't That a Pain, both titles, hit you with this, oh, God, that's terrible. Straight away, roughly what the song's going to be like, or how it's going to be structured. That's what it jumped out at me as. I know where this is going, you know.
Yeah, no kidding. Leroy Carr in particular had a pretty troubled life. I mean, he spent a lot of time in the bottle. He wrote a lot of songs about drinking, like Straight Alky Blues Part
Yeah.
1, Straight Alky Blues Part 2. And I don't know this. I mean, what else you got to say, Leroy? But I mean, he had a problem with it, of course, and that eventually led to his death at age 30. But I got to believe he maybe was in Christmas or in jail on Christmas. Who knows? I don't know. I don't think a lot's known about Leroy Carr, but I could certainly imagine that he may have been in the slammer
I
over
would imagine. So
Christmas.
I did a bit of digging, and I think it was partly written by Floyd Thompson as well.
Well, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Carr and Blackwell didn't write that song. It was
Yeah, it
Thompson
was
and
Floyd Thompson,
Guernsey.
wasn't it?
Yeah, and there's another guy named J.E. Guernsey, I think, who I don't know these guys. So, yeah, I wish I knew how it came together, because most of the songs that I know from Leroy Carr and Scrapper, they credit a lot of them to Leroy Carr and then a fair number of them to Leroy and Scrapper. But I think folks kind of concluded that Scrapper helped with pretty much all these songs, but wasn't credited in the early days of their collaboration. So you're right. They did not write that song, and how they ever hooked up with those two guys, I mean, I wish I knew the story. But I
Yeah,
bet.
I tried to do a little bit of digging about Floyd Thompson and got literally nowhere. It's like he never existed. It's one of those where that might have been the only thing he ever wrote, possibly.
Yeah, I
And
did a lot of that
a lot of
too.
these songs go back, and somebody will say, "Oh, such and such a person wrote that," and then someone will go, "No, it wasn't him, or it wasn't her. It was somebody," and then you never get to the real writer, which makes it more interesting, I think.
Yeah, some of those early blues, St. James Infirmary, and on it goes. I don't even know if people know who wrote some of these things.
No.
They just got played and played and played. And, you know, How Long Blues by Carr and Blackwell has been done. They redid it like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times. They kept re-recording it and changing it a little bit uh, because it was such a hit that it's like, well, we got to do something else. Just do another version of that one, which I
Well,
know
like
how
you say,
that feels.
there's a list as long as your arm of the people who've
Yeah,
covered How
yeah.
Long Blues. You
You
know,
know,
so they did something right.
we were talking about how we did the song in the studio, Christmas in
Yeah,
Jail. And we had the Hodges brothers. Reverend Charles Hodges plays the Hammond organ, and
yeah.
Leroy Hodges plays bass.
Bass.
And, you know, it's just, we're sort of like, I've got Archie Turner on the Wurlitzer piano, Steve Potts on drums, and then an unbelievably talented young artist, Lena Beach, on guitar, very young. And the high rhythm section, those other gentlemen have taken her under their wing, and they're creating a star in her. She's amazing. But we started to goof around with the song, and Leroy just gets this bass groove going that just drove the whole song. And I remember at one point we're kind of working. I said, "Hey, Leroy, I'm trying to figure out where I come in after you guys do this, that, and the other." I said, can you plink that bass line there right before I come in? Let me hear it. You know, I want to know what you're going to play there." And so he goes, "I have no idea what I'm going to play. I'll get to it when I get to it."
Yeah,
And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I mean, you guys are just so good. It just flows out of you, you know." And it did. It just flowed out of us. And that's what was so fun. I play a little harmonica in there. It's like I hadn't played that before. We were just recording live, and I just started playing. I think that's the way everybody did that song. So it's cool to do it live. Really, there might have been a little bit of overdub later, but not much. It was just, let's go make a song, fellas and
yeah.
ladies.
Like I say, they're so talented. It must be something in the dirt down there. Like I say, you know, you just said to Leroy, "Let me know how you're going to play," and he go, "I can't tell you how I'm going to do it," and then he just does it, and they go, "There, that's yeah," but he can't explain how he's going to do it.
Yeah.
That is masterful.
You know, another thing I learned about Royal, I just wrote this down, but they've done so much in the blues arena. They've recorded their Buddy Guy, Bobby Bland, Ike and Tina, Chuck Berry, Robert Cray, Cedric Burnside. You know, Robert Cray did an album, I think it's called Robert Cray and High Rhythm, and that's the backing band. And he just went in there
Yeah,
because he knew that sound would be super cool. And the studio, it was built in 1915. It's an old movie theater that
yeah.
became the studio in the 50s. And man, it looks the same, which is super cool. It's a different feel.
I was going to say, you do get the feel when it is a purposely built studio. You know, like I said, it used to be a movie theatre. Now it's a studio. It's almost a perfect environment to record in.
It, you know, it's funny. When I first started playing music, and was in a band, I didn't know how people did everything. It's like, well, we have rehearsal. How do you do that? Well, I'm here and you're across from me. It's like, oh, okay. I used to perform on stage and so forth, and you know that's not how we rehearsed it. But and then we get into this studio, and it's a long, narrow room, and you can tell those guys have walked into that room 1,000 times. And Leroy goes down there, and Steve's over there, and they almost don't. I don't think they can even. Not all of them can see each other, and they're all just listening. You know, they're
Yeah.
just listening and making music, and they're just so used to just making this magic. A couple of them can see each other, and then Lena's kind of stuck in a hallway there, and I can see Lena, but I can't. I think I can see Archie Turner on the Wurlitzer, but I can't see much else. It's just it's like, hey guys, that's how we do it, and boy, it
It
sure
works.
works.
Yeah. So, do you and Emma have plans to work together in the near future?
You
Anything that?
know, we've been on such a whirlwind. She is just everywhere in the US and in
Yeah.
Europe performing. I can't even remember. We've shared a couple of emails, I think, but that's all we've done since here is just finish this up. We haven't even thought about it, I don't think. So who knows? I'd love to go up on stage and sing with her, and if we can get over to Europe, that'd be something I would hope we could make happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's going to happen. So, tell me about the Josie Awards and you being a presenter there. What was that like?
Well, it was very
What's the
cool.
Josie Awards all about?
Well, the
Explain.
Josie Awards, it's become a big thing. It's in its 18th year. It's for independent artists, that aren't with major labels, but they pack the Grand Ole Opry House. I mean, every seat is sold. It's a big
Wow.
deal. And it's for all genres. It's not just country music. So the blues are part of it, jazz, country, etc. And I got asked to be a presenter of the, I think it was the Songwriter of the Year award in a number of categories. So I got invited. It's kind of like, well, I don't know. I've never done this before. And off I go to Nashville. It's about a 5-hour drive by car for me. And, I've got the VIP pass and all this stuff. And I go in the artist entrance and the Grand Ole Opry. It's a show that'll have 5, 6, 7 acts on in an evening. So you go backstage, there's 30 dressing rooms because they've got to have room for all these artists, which was really kind of fun. So it was great being backstage. It was great being on stage and to meet a lot of people in all sorts of music genres. And that's what it is. So there you go. It's pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. It was a great evening.
Yeah, something you really enjoyed, even though you'd never sort of been in that position before.
Yeah, maybe you can tell. I'm sure every artist has this, but not maybe everyone. But I kind of like being in stage, and I like having a microphone shoved in my face. So they had they had the red carpet and all that stuff, and had a bunch of media there interviewing you. So I'm like, hey, this is a lot of fun. I enjoy that stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've done it a couple of times myself at the UK Blues Awards. Been asked to present, like we sponsor a category, International Blues Artist of the Year, and I've done it for the last 2 years. It's not easy. You're a performer. You could take to it easily. I'm not. It's but it is a lot of fun when you do it and you see everybody else. So yeah. So I've been reading some of the Johnny Phillips is obviously a big fan of yours, as he should be. I'm reading some of the quotes. You're deeply rooted in the blues. He loves an original band and the music. He cannot speak more highly of you. Were you in awe of meeting him, or or was it just like a musician, meeting a studio guy?
Well,
How did you get on? Is what I'm trying to say.
yes. Well, I talked to him on a phone a couple of times. We got introduced by a producer who heard my music. I had already recorded and produced our first album, Stuck in the Mud, and I didn't have a label. I was hunting for a label, and I had somebody make an introduction, which that's what this thing's all about. And Johnny and I spoke, and he said, hey, if Jim Riley says I should listen to your stuff, I'm listening to your stuff. And he did. And then I went to Memphis some months later and was able to drop by Select-O-Hits, his business. And I guess the answer to your question, Stephen, is I was in total awe of Johnny Phillips. You walk into his office and it's like, gold records, platinum records, because, his uncle, Sam Phillips, that's all part of that same family.
Yeah.
And his office is I just want to look around and look at all the memorabilia on the wall. But as far as a person, it's like, he's just a regular guy. And he loves music just like you and I do. And he couldn't be more friendly and helpful. We would not have been able to do this recording session in Memphis without Johnny Phillips's help. I mean, he said, I called him. I said, Johnny, I want to do this record. I got 2 songs I want to record. Yeah, we'll get them out there for you. What do you need? I said, well, I need a place to record them. Let me make some phone calls. I remember, like I said, I got a call from Boone Mitchell one evening after Johnny had talked to him. I mean, that doesn't happen. If I'm some guy, who are you? I've never heard of you. And you want our studio when? And wait a minute, that's 10 days from now. Wait, what? But he called and said, hey, I got a call from Johnny Phillips, and how can I help you? I mean, that's the way it works, because he's well known in the music world, and it's great to have an introduction like that. What a gentleman. And I know he's a huge Emma Wilson fan too. So I think he was invested to try and help both of us do something that we wanted to do, and great to have him help us do it.
Yeah, well, basically, that's what it should be. You don't always, he's not always going to record people like Buddy Guy. You've got to go and, you have to open doors for other people. And but that's great that somebody, like say, is almost music royalty. Johnny, the Phillips family, like say, going back to Sam Phillips,
Yeah.
who made quite an impression on music, 60, 70 years ago. So to keep it in the family and to have somebody like his nephew still wanted to introduce new talent and help new talent. That speaks volumes about the man and the family. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and you know what? They're hard workers. It's not glamour. They're just really fine people. All the people I've worked with there, you know, I think Steven, you know, any of us imagine what it's like to be, you know, music royalty and but it's like look, they're like everybody else. They're trying to do what they do in their world. They have a business they work hard at and you know when you help people. I mean that business has been there since 1960, the Select-O-Hits business, which
Mm,
Sam founded. I mean that's what 65 years
yeah.
of starting out by probably putting records in envelopes and shipping them out to people. That's what they did. Today it's all, you know, digital and it's social media and you name it, but they have adapted with the times and they're still there. It's really cool.
You do. I mean, you do have to adapt with the times. That's where, like us going from print to digital. You do have to adapt. But everybody has to start from. Everybody starts somewhere. Like say, putting records in envelopes and sending them out. You're learning from the ground up.
Yeah.
But the history of the Philips studio, that's the important thing. Not how they started off or where they are now. It's the history and everything they've done for musicians.
Yeah, and there's Sam Phillips Studios is still going, so it's run by a Phillips family member. So when they want to make something happen in music, I mean, they're all connected. It's just it's really cool to be a part of that.
I would love to chat to Johnny Phillips one day. Hopefully, he would be great to interview. Yeah.
Yeah, he would, and we can make that happen, Stephen. I know we
Well,
can.
yeah, I would like to think so. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and this one's just been
Interesting.
my hope was maybe on this to make it happen. Even just doing 2 songs, it sounds really simple, but all the work that has to go into it behind the scenes, it's almost like the writing of the song and the creating of the song and the recording of the song is maybe 1/10 of the amount of work that it takes to get it
Mm.
out in the world, which is crazy, isn't it? That it just takes so much. The world's so complex, you know, to get all this stuff done.
Yeah. Well, thank heaven for people who know what they're doing. That
I would,
Then
you know, how would I know how to do this? You know, our songs go out on every streaming platform pretty much around the world. They know how to do that. You know,
yeah.
every song has a little secret code in it that, you know, the artist gets credit for. I don't understand how that works. They know how to do all this stuff. It's like, oh my goodness. So they've got a big machine on their end doing it. You know, you mentioned adapting with the times. It just kind of hit me. You know, to that end, when we made the plans to do these 2 songs, I said, we need to film this because to adapt to the times means you can't just put a record out. People want to see some visual aspect to it too. So I called Coop Cooper, who is a filmmaker in Clarksdale, Mississippi. It's about 90 minutes from Memphis. Coop has done some filming for Christone Kingfish and filmed his 662 video.
Mm.
And I said, Coop, last minute thing here. Are you able to film a studio session in Memphis on the 25th of September? He said, hey, I'm filming the night before in Memphis. I'll just stick around. And so it's like, oh man, you know, and in fact, when Boo Mitchell called me, he said, well, when do you want to do this? I said, well, the 25th of September. He goes, let me look at the calendar. He goes, that's the only open date I have in the next month. That's it. It's the only day. I said, I'll take it.
Everything falls into place for a reason.
And Emma, she had 1 day where she
Yeah.
was in Memphis and didn't have a show. It's like, and Coop was there and Boo was there and the band was available. And it's like, you hope that means something for some magic.
Yeah. It,
We felt like it when we heard the
yeah.
music when it
It's
was
happened
done.
for a reason. So, with all that coming together, who'd have thought that all that would literally come together in one day on the
Yeah,
same day?
I
So
know.
that's good vibes, man. That's good vibes.
It really was. And, you know, another thing I was talking about just the nature of Johnny Phillips and their business and the family. You know, they're professional, they're friendly, they're helpful. Okay, now I'm walking into a studio and here's a band that used to play. I mentioned all those people they played with, and also throw in people like I'm just Rod Stewart and Joe Cocker and Boz Scaggs. That band all played with those guys. So here comes Christopher Wyze. It's like, who's this guy? And you know what? they could not have been any kinder, more helpful, supportive. You know, it's like, look, we're trying to make great music here. And I think maybe they know, although we didn't talk about it, that maybe a little bit of their job is to make me feel comfortable because I've got to stand up
Mhm.
there
Yeah.
and perform this song in front of music royalty and
Yeah.
feel like we're a band. It's like, you know, we're all together. It's not like, hey, there's these superstars behind you and then, you know, you're there on your own. No, it's not like that at all. They could not have been more helpful to me and more supportive. And, you know, the other thing is it was fun. They're having fun making music. They're like, oh, this is a cool song. Tell me about it. You know, it's like, how'd you come up with this? And wow, that Leroy Carr song, that is so cool. They're like, I remember I was after the session was over, they were like, well, you know, we had a meal, we took a break, and we all got to know each other. Tell me about your music. And then I had a few CDs in my like backpack there, and they're all like, hey, I want one of those. I want one of those. I'm like, I can't believe it. I can't believe these guys who have literally been all around the world making music for some of the greatest names, and they're like, they want to listen to my music. It's like, wow, that just blows you away, man.
Yeah, well, it's a bond between musicians and players and writers and everybody in this business, so to speak.
Well, I kind of, you know, like,
Everybody starts somewhere, and people have helped me and have been very kind to me. And I sometimes think I'm way out of my depth, but everybody's been so kind. And I think that within the music industry, especially the blues music industry,
yeah.
it's part of where it comes from. I think that's part of it. The beginning, and it's not all glitz and glamour. That's the
You know,
thing.
yeah, you know, I think in the blues, I think even the listeners, the fans are part of it as well, more so maybe than other genres. Maybe jazz or something, but you know, you get big popular genres and the fans aren't as connected, I don't think. You know, you mentioned our band, we're not out touring. We've done a grand total of 3 shows in our life. One of them was our first show was recorded and filmed as a
Hmm.
live album. And we did another one here in Indianapolis in my hometown here. And it was at a small outdoor venue. We just wanted to do it just for fun, you know. It was in the summer and there was a couple there in the audience afterwards that came up to me and they say, hey, man, we love your music and all that. Thank you very much. Where are you from? And they said, well, we drove up from South Carolina. And here in the US, South Carolina is probably where they drove from 12 or 13 hours
Wow.
to hear our show. I'm like, so you have family up here? No. Do you like, is this part of your work or what are you doing? They're like, no, we've heard your music. We love your music and we follow you on Facebook and da da da. And I'm like, I can't believe what I just heard. But I think about the blues, you know, many blues artists, at the very top of their game, play smaller venues where, you know, you take a break before the next set and you go out and talk to the people and they talk to
Wow.
you and you feel like you know each other. I don't know, Stephen, I feel like that's maybe a little different with the blues. These venues we play in, they're very close to these people. You know, many of us are playing some covers, but we're playing a lot of our original music, and the people who go to show up, they're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you go to a normal bar, and I used to play in a cover band. It's like they want to hear music that they know and their covers, but here they're coming to hear your music, and they feel like they're a part of it because it's almost like they've just discovered something really unique and special when you get to the blues, more so than maybe sort of popular music.
I couldn't agree more, Chris. I couldn't agree more. Which, and then, that's a great way to finish this chat. It's been lovely. But yeah, I think the blues is different, how it attracts people. You mentioned Kingfish. We went to see him last Thursday,
Oh,
Kingfish. Yeah. I mean, just how good is that guy? He's unbelievably good. Unbelievably good. Smallish venue. Well, about 1,100 capacity, something like that. And he was just unbelievably good.
yeah.
And he's a nice guy. He really is a nice guy. So
You know, and he's starting his own label now, and it's just
yes, he
great.
has. Yeah, Red Zero. Yeah,
Yeah, it's cool to see that, and, you know, here's a kid who came up out of Clarksdale.
yeah.
I think he participated in some of the Delta Blues Museum, you know, music classes. You know, they're keeping we always talk about keeping the blues
Keeping the
alive.
blues
Well,
alive.
there's an example of a kid who learned it right there with some of that effort of keeping the blues alive through things like the Delta Blues Museum, and, so cool to see what he's doing.
It is. Well, you were part of keeping the blues alive as well. You're as much a part of it as Kingfish because you're all
Well,
doing the
that's
same
really
job.
kind.
Yeah, I would like to thank you so much for your time, Chris. It's been lovely to chat to you again. Catch up soon.